All right, we have finished up our black shape vector design. So now the EPS is the one we're going to use because we're using the Adobe Creative Cloud. If we were using Photopea, I would say let's use the SVG. So the EPS, I am not going to open with Photoshop. If I do that, what does it do? It forces me to rasterize it. And if I know exactly what I'm doing, if I change it to RGB mode and make it 8 by 10 inches at 350 pixels per inch, what that will do is rasterize my logo from edge to edge to be exactly 8 by 10 by 350. But that's not exactly my print job. So we don't do this because we don't want to rasterize it. We want to keep it as a vector. So instead, to really control it and control layout, we open Photoshop on its own. The new versions, we kind of skim through it, and then we say File, New. And this is a familiar screen, right? So we want to set it, make sure it's in inches, not pixels, to 8 by 10 inches. The only time you would do 10 by 8 is if your logo is wider than it is tall, right? Or your vector. And then the resolution we want is 350 pixels per inch. And then everything else, the defaults, RGB color mode, not CMYK, 8-bit in terms of its memory processing, and white as the background, right? You create it. Now we have something, you can see it in the bottom left-hand corner, 8 by 10 inches, 350 pixels per inch. Great. What do we do now? We're going to drag and drop the EPS file onto it, just like we did with our compositing references, right? Right from exercise 1 in the line art. So what does that do? Well, it will center it, but maybe our design isn't perfectly centered. So we want to control the layout, and it will bring it in as a smart object. So if I hit return, you'll see that there's that little icon in the bottom corner. That means if I try to erase from it, it will say this would need to be rasterized, right? Smart objects are not directly editable. And that's a good thing because as a vector smart object, no matter what size I make it, it will always be as clean as it possibly can be within that pixel space. So right now, this shows me what 8 by 10 inches looks like at 350 pixels per inch, and it puts my design like very close to the edge. Now, I'm going to actually be more specific with you than I've ever been for printing, because it will save me time printing it if you guys understand this. So I'm going to turn on the camera here and show you how we turn a digital thing into a physical product, which is what we're doing for our midterm, right? This is an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, a letter-sized piece of paper. This is specialized Epson ultra premium matte presentation paper, right? Which means it's clay coated. It's made to be printed on one side, not the other side. It's 8.5 by 11 inches. We could print on that entire 8.5 by 11. But the problem is 8.5 by 11 is not a presentation standard in imaging, in media. 8 by 10 is the presentation standard. Now they say it's 8 by 10, but a lot of America's media standards, which are different than European or Japanese media standards, they don't give a lot of credit to the user. So they say it's 8 by 10, but it's actually 7.5 by 9.5. Why is it a ½ inch different on each side? It's because if I printed this at 8 by 10 and then fit it exactly into an 8 by 10 window, there'd be a tiny sliver, like millimeter sliver of white around my image, right? And I'd have to line it up just exactly. So to make it more user-friendly, they do an overlap of a 1/4 inch at each side, no matter the mat size. So when I say it's an 8 by 10 opening, and you buy it as an 8 by 10 opening, and it's 11 by 14 on the outside, and this is what Hobby Lobby calls it. It's backwards, but it's 11 by 14 inches. That's because the outside of the mat is 11 by 14 inches, and it is. But the inside is not 8 by 10, it's 7.5 by 9.5. So what can we do to really, really mock that up exactly? we can go to our image and go to image size, and we can make this 7.5, resample it. Actually, that's a bad way to do it because that will smush my logo. So I don't want to go to image size. I want to go to canvas size. And I want to resample it to 7.5 by 9.5. Now remember, canvas size is the only way to grow from the middle. This is shrinking from the middle, right? We are cutting off a 1/4 inch from each side. When we do that, it's going to ask, this is going to cut into your current image. And I'm not worried at all about that. You know why? Because it's a smart object. So all the data is still there. Now this shows me what my image would look like inside a mat, a black mat. And notice how this black is a little bit lighter than this black, just like you'll see on your prints. So now we get to size this to what we think would look best. So I hit Command T, and to lock proportions, I hold down Option so that it shrinks. It doesn't stretch, but it shrinks just towards the middle. And I try to kind of squint and see, okay, what looks visually best? I like that. And then I like to hold down Shift and move it from the center so it locks the axis so it doesn't drift one way or the other. And I just move it up a little bit because this is called visual weighting. Our eye tends to make things fall, so it's good to just move it up a little bit. So this is how I would want to print it and mat it to present this to a client. So now we have the smart object. How can I make sure it's absolutely the darkest black possible and not CMYK black? I'm going to double click on it, on the layer itself, just like when we did onion skinning in Illustrator, not on the letters of the layer, but around the letters of the layer. It opens up the layer styles. I'm going to click on color overlay, and I'm going to click on opacity 100%, normal mode, and I'm going to click on the color, and I'm going to make sure, now that we're in RGB, which is the default coloring of Photoshop, and say OK. Now, this might make it look different to your eye, or it might not, right? To me, it doesn't really make it look too different, but that ensures we're at the darkest possible black, what's called 100% black. All right, now we are ready to save our first print-ready file. And this is how we do it. First, we're going to save it as a PSD. I'm going to say File, Save As. I'm going to write my name. And this is Assignment 4. And this is my black vector. And this is a stump, right? To the desktop, PSD. That is a working file format, because now it has a smart object included, right? So as long as I have that EPS on the same computer where I'm working on this PSD, this is now the working layout. So I'm going to mark that green. And we're going to go back to that to make all of our print-ready layouts. Okay, next, I need to make the one that we're going to print. And to do that, and then I'll make the one that goes on the canvas, the online format. So this is what's called an archive format. I'm going to say layer, flatten image, which is dangerous because that just rasterized everything, right? And immediately I go to File, Save As, and I change the name. So for every print we make in this class, you are going to name it with PR in front of your name. Stands for print ready. This is the print ready version, and it ensures that you're not going to overwrite your others. We're going to change the format to a new format, which is called an archive format. And in Photoshop, it shows up as TIFF, but on the file type, it will just show up as TIF, right? They're both TIFFs. Then I say save to the desktop. Now this will come up open, and this is important. TIFF is an archive format that allows for a type of compression called LZW that is the only lossless compression format. It means if you use this, it shrinks the size, especially on a flattened TIFF, but it never hurts the quality. It just takes a little bit longer to open and a little bit longer to save. So we always want LZW with our TIFFs and leave all the defaults. Now I go to my desktop, and what color do we make our archive formats? The ones that are going to print from. We're going to make these yellow. All right. Why yellow? Let's see. Because if you store white paper long enough, it eventually turns yellow. So think of like yellow as for storage. Okay, now I want you to be careful here. Right now it says the TIFF. So we don't want to work with the TIFF. We want to then close it. The TIFF has done its job, and I'll show you what we do with that later in order to print it. Right now we want to work with the working format, the PSD, in order to get the online version. So to do that, I turn off the background, because this logo for your client, if they just want a file they can immediately put on their website, right? You're going to make a PNG for them without any background. So that's free floating. And then we say File, Save a Copy, and then we change the format to a PNG because we don't want the white to fill in. And that's a loss compression format that is for online. And so that one I make orange, and that one I put up onto canvas. All right, now what do we do with the black vector that is yellow, that's ready for printing? What you do is you go into the class and you go to links, and I'm not going to open it on the public YouTube because that's where you'll find the link to our class Dropbox. Not only will you find the link to our class Dropbox, you will find how you log in to the class Dropbox. So I want you guys all to do that on all your computers, even if your vector is not ready, because you're going to be putting your prints here. Because I might have to unlock it for you, right? So as we get into the class Dropbox, that's my personal Dropbox. Let me change here. Log out. And I gotta stop the video here while all right. Once you get into the class Dropbox, let's go to the home here. I want you to ignore all the activity. Click on Digital Art Class Files, number 1, and then click on Flatten TIFF Files to Print. Right? This is just to put your prints in the right place. And then you each have a folder here, and I have a folder here. So this is my folder. I'm going to put in my PR TIFF, my print ready TIFF, the yellow. I drag and drop it in. It will lose its color in Dropbox, right? But it will keep your name and it will be in your folder. And then to remind you, under the flattened TIFF files to print, where the folder is for each of your names, right? They're empty right now. You just drag your TIFFs onto there. You will see instructions at the end in a PDF for how to make them print ready. Just to check them before. And it's called flattened TIFF files to print because nothing should go in here that is a PSD, that is a JPEG, that is a PNG, that is an EPS, that is an SVG, that is an AI. They should all be TIFFs. And TIFFs do not need to be flattened, but to optimize for printing, they should be flattened, right? Okay. So we talked about how to get your online file. We got that. Now I'm in my PSD for my black vector, and now I'm going to learn how to make color variations. So I'm going to turn on my white background, and then I'm going to duplicate it, Command J. And I'm going to say Edit Fill. So for those of you who are finished with your black logo and you're formatting it, I want you to do this. And I'm going to fill that background with 50% gray. And then I'm going to duplicate that, and I'm going to edit fill the back